Hi, I'm Anuj Gosalia, and I'm the founder of a company called Terribly Tiny Tales. Many relatives still confuse it for Terrible Tiny Tales, and I have to go and convince them that on most days we are not terrible. In this session, it's going to be a short one, and true to our name, we'll keep it terribly tiny. We aim to do three things. One is tell you a little tale about my own journey. Then about stories, what kind of stories work in 2024 on the internet. And then if we have time, we'll try and write one of our own, right? So that's what we aim to achieve. So we have very little time. I'm going to go real quick. Okay, so it starts with me sucking at academics. So bad that a magazine featured me, right? I got 48% in my second year in commerce. I couldn't write a popular MBA entrance exam called the CAT because I was not eligible. And I genuinely struggled with academics. So my distraction was college festivals, right? So I enjoyed college festivals. I loved organizing them. And when you're 18, you're kind of naive and think that, okay, what is a startup? A startup is an extension of a college festival. Because what happens in a startup, a bunch of friends come together, have fun, and build something, right? And so, I can still feel the pain, sorry. I failed at two of them, one of which involved me selling notebooks, t-shirts, diaries outside colleges across India. It was like, if you know of this brand called Chumbak, I tried to build a Chumbak of my own, called it Bechen Nagri. Yeah, it was called Bechen Nagri, but of course, again, cousins and relatives thought I was pursuing pornography or something. So they got very worried. It was like, oh, pursuing childhood passion, don't take it seriously. So this was a phase in life and this was really hard. Now, in hindsight, all tragedy feels entertaining. But when you're in the moment, it's brutal, right? So when you failed at two things, you don't know what you're good at. You really go into this really empty existential place. And so I had to really go deep and ask what is true to me, right? And what is authentic to me. And the only theme in my life is that I was drawn to stories and I was drawn to writing. And I was not trained. I studied in Narsimhanji College in Bombay. There was no reference of any writing career in my life. And so I was like, what do I do? And so I started writing on Facebook, started writing poems about my heartbreak, about my life. They got 4 likes. It was like 3 close friends and my mom, a comment which said, get a job. And another comment after that which said, get a life. And so each time I wrote these long expressions, it was 3 likes, 7 likes, 4 likes. And I was like, okay, what am I doing with my life? And so I was like, okay, what are other people doing on the internet? And I see a cat, just a cat sitting on a pot. 5,000 likes. And there's a good morning message. 8,000 likes. Then of course it comes on all our WhatsApp groups every morning now. So you know how popular they are. And so I was like, okay, if you can't beat them, join them. And so I made my own memes before memes were a thing. This is an homage to a Swedish DJ band called Swedish House Mafia. I made it the Swadeshi House Mafia. I've cropped the likes because there weren't any. So I failed at this and I was like, okay, what do I do? This is a place where I'm genuinely struggling. And so my first gig, so I was like, okay, I wrote a message on WhatsApp saying, hey, look, writing is the only thing I know. If you or any of your friends, family, cousins need a writer on hire, please. And so I wrote a lot of baby shower messages for free. I corrected a lot of emails for free. Then I started sending invoices. And all of those inquiries stopped. So my first gig was writing a menu card for a North Delhi restaurant. I got paid 500 rupees. It was the best 500 rupees of my life because I got to do what I loved and made money from it. And of course, because you're getting paid for writing, I converted all of paneer in North Delhi to cottage cheese because it was paying me. So I was like, okay, if I'm a writer, like look at Tamatar Dhania Shorba, which is a pretty boring soup. appetizing Indian soup of fresh tomatoes and coriander leaves flavored with cumin seeds. And it should be sold for 600, but it was sold for 60 because the restaurant was that. So TTT happened as a personal project. Class on nuclear physics, she yawns, starts a chain reaction. I'm looking at you. I don't want chain reactions of yawns here. I'm desperately trying to make this entertaining. So this tiny story, right, compared to all that long essay of my heartbreak, was like, my God, this 3 lines got 300 likes. And I was like, okay, clearly people are not struggling with connection. They're struggling with attention. And so there is an insight here. And so we started writing more, right? Not just me, my friends, people I knew. Man walks into a bar, whiskey large, a boy walks out. I read this in I Am Ahmedabad. It didn't get much reception. Crazy bird she was, only flew when no one watched. None could keep her, all failed to train her. Funny name she had, Time. Soon at the temple called Wankhede, a god will retire. And every Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Sikh and Parsi will have a poorer religion. This is when Sachin retired, right? We wrote this when Sachin retired. So the architect made houses. The writer made poetry. The scientist made discoveries. The teacher made them all. Right, so just these tiny stories traveled and started building a community. And once there was an audience, brands started coming to us and saying, hey, can you write tiny stories for us? Bhai forgets anniversaries, birthdays and important events all year, but then chooses 2 days where the packages don't stop coming and the doorbell keeps ringing. Our favorite days to discover joy. Right? So this is powered by Amazon. Avoided all spoilers, didn't talk to my colleagues for 2 days and hid the TV remote. He was running 2 episodes behind and the show was to be watched together even from miles away. It was the best friend deal. Right? So simple stories that brands like Parley hide and seek, right? So you'll see some of the world's and the country's biggest brands come and say, hey, look, and then there's even brands which you will not associate with the internet, with digital content. Saradon, they all give me headaches, the introvert mumbled at a Diwali party. Even me, her cousin asked, no, you're the one who lightens my sardard with all the gossip you give me. Right? So tiny stories, very centered around what a brand wants to say. And for the longest time, when family asked me, how, Anuj, all of this is good, but what's your full-time job? I didn't have an answer till brand started paying us, right? So dozed off in a meeting, snapped at coworker, almost hit send on my resignation draft until I had my midday chocolate fix. Turns out I don't really hate my job. This is most of us on Mondays, actually. She pulled me and jumped in the puddle. The splash painted our dresses mud brown. We left home as mother and daughter, returned as friends. Right? So again, a brand like Benetton, where there's no mention of clothes and garments, but just the core of the brand. And this has become the new way of telling stories, right? And we'll speak about this in just a little bit. But this is TTT. And this was great, right? We were telling these tiny stories and brands were coming to us. And like it happens in startups, you start out well and you feel like you're winning the world. And then you get ambitious and then you say, okay, I want to now not just win the world, I want to change the world. And so you swing for the big things. And so you can make a thing so perfect that it's ruined, right? So the ambition is to really change the world, but it doesn't land. And so we said, okay, wow, this idea is so mind-blowing. The whole world wants to write tiny stories. Let's build Twitter, but for stories and tiny stories. So we tried to build out an app. We spent tons of money, hours. We literally got broke trying to build this. Got 500,000 people writing on this app. And then we realized that it's only 500,000 people who care about this. Because another friend came along then, which was TikTok, and then Reels. And then everyone said, hey, look, we don't want to read even tiny stories. We want people dancing and people singing and people having fun and entertaining us all the time. So we said, okay, that failed, but we'll continue building. And so we said, okay, there's a product. If those of you who don't know, there's a very popular email product called Substack, where you can write your own newsletter. And we said, okay, India maybe ek Substack banna chahiye. And so we spent a ton of effort and money and time on building Substack for India, which also failed. And so one of the big learnings, and I'm sharing this because as founders and so many of you here are building things and run things, and the ambition is always to grow. But the only hindsight wisdom is that thankfully we didn't park every dollar we had behind this, right? And so we always kept doing the thing we loved, which is telling stories. We never stopped telling stories. And so the small wins, right? Listen to your consumer. This is the only feedback that matters. No VC, no investor, no mummy, no papa. There's only your consumer that matters. And so we said, hey, look, let's chase the internet. Let's be ahead of it. And so we started telling stories in more formats, right? What a sad weekend this was, yaar. It's life, bro, not the weekend. Happy New Year. It's just new digits, bro. Didn't How I Met Your Mother end too abruptly. Zindagi bhi ek din aise hi abruptly khatam ho jayegi, bro. Sorry, this got a little too intense, but we started telling stories in formats that mattered, right? We're all talking like this. We started telling stories in comic strips, right? I'm so happy you came for Diwali. You're happy because you will exchange my new clothes with yours and make me click 1,000 pictures. And this is powered by a brand called Meesho, right? So, and then we said, why just text? If we can shrink a book into 140 characters, let's shrink a movie. And so we started making something called Terribly Tiny Talkies. And so now we've got tons and tons of films with Anupam Kher, Jackie Shroff. It was a beautiful film called Kheer, a film called Khujli with Neena Gupta and Jackie Shroff. And so all of these films, which is called the TTT Academy. So now as we speak, we train the largest number of writers and content creators in India with over 10,000 people who've learned at TTT Academy. Right? And these are students from some of the biggest places, right? So students from IBM, Ernst & Young, IIMs, and you've got recruiters like The Whole Truth, Shebang. We've got instructors from Ogilvy, the best places in the country. So the big learning is that small wins compound, right? They come together. And so TTT today is a community of 3.5 million people on Instagram, 1.7 million people on Facebook, 600,000 people on YouTube, and 44,000 people on Twitter. Right? So you just keep at it. It's taken us about a decade, but it's in a good place. And we still take those big swings, but we're just a tad bit wiser now. So we listen to the consumer. We've worked with 400 brands, 75,000 writers. We get 25 million views every week. Okay, so very quickly, this is for all of you. How are stories getting consumed in 2024, right? I'm going to give you a very quick walkthrough, right? And just some learnings that will be useful if you're running your Instagram, your Twitter, your social media. I think these are things we've learned it's taken us 10 years to learn this, and these rules are not changing anytime soon. The first rule to create any story in 2024, especially on the internet, is you need a hook on top, right? What is a hook? A hook is, I want 7% FD returns, or why 10-minute delivery is a lie, or this session is going to change your life. That's a hook. Now, if I manage to add some value, I've made the hook worth your time. But if I'm not, it falls under what is called clickbait, right? So if I do this 2 times and you're like, Anuj, sorry, not this time around, don't do that. But without a hook, you might write the most beautiful thing. You might make the most beautiful video. No one's going to watch it. Because sadly, we're all like right now, right? If I'm like, okay, Anuj, you're going on for too long. There's like 5 messages on my WhatsApp, needs attention. You're going to open that phone on the side and type out that message. That's the time we're living in, right? So I'm not judging the time, it's what it is. And so if you want to break through within the time, you need some of this. Another big mistake that lots and lots of creators, marketers, storytellers make is they want to be creative. One of the first rules is correct first, creative later, right? So clarity is the first rule. Don't say it to anyone, but if you have to say, I hate you, say I hate you. Don't say I have a distinct dislike for how your face appears in front of my eyes. Because then someone might end up saying thank you and you'll be very confused. So be clear, right? And then be creative. So then say, okay, is hate the right word? No, I detest you. Uh, or I am slightly unhappy with you, right? You can choose the right word later. One of the classic examples, um, there are constellations on his skin and dewdrops in his eyes. The sadness oozes out and causes a wildfire in my heart. That's an ocean of emotions. I lay him down and caress his black tresses to take him to a dreamland. That's one on the left. On the right here, right now, there's this human lying on my lap, snoring lightly as a tear slips from the corner of his eye and soaks my skirt. I can't feel my left leg, but his head feels light. Do we have a preference on the right? How many people on the right? Raise your hands. How many people like the one on the right, which is this one? Yes. And the one on the left? Not too many. Okay, then there's some people who are like, dono hi achhe nahi the. So like, okay, got it. But you get the point, right? The simpler your writing, the simpler your communication, the more memorable, the more easier it is. And the third is relatability. This is a word you will get, it's thrown around a lot, which is your message is not relatable, your story is not relatable, your content is not relatable. What is relatable, right? So very quickly, the first circle, it happened to me. This is coming from my life. Therefore, it is relatable. If it's relatable to at least one person, which is you, there is a chance it might be relatable to someone else. There's this wonderful rule in screenwriting. Stories that are deeply personal are often universal, right? It's a beautiful rule. Second is someone I know of. Your own life might be pretty boring. So please don't seek drama in your life, because I was like, I want to make my stories relatable, so I'm making my life super dramatic. No. A good content creator, a good marketer, a good storyteller, a good writer will be able to write about stories that are not their own, but someone they know of, right? So your grandfather, your parent, your child, your sister, your sibling, your best friend, they all have interesting lives. Borrow from them. Be a creep. Listen to what they have to say and use them in your content, right? And so, just reference Dil Chahta Hai, Three Idiots, Gulzar's works, a lot of the work that the Viral Fever comes out with, they all come from these places, right? They happen to them. They're autobiographical. A last few things before we end today's session. Deconstruct any form of communication, not just stories, right? With this 3-layered technique, right? It's pretty simple. We call this intent, content, and construct, right? It absolutely holds true. Intent is what do you want to say, right? One of the biggest problems that storytellers, content creators have is, oh, I made this thing, but no one cared about it. Like, usko 4 like aaye, 3 like aaye. It was what happened to my poems, right? I used to write these long poems. Turns out, I never bothered to ask, what do I want to say? Do I want to say like, I met her and then at the restaurant we kept on speaking and it was so nice and it was the most amazing date, and like, sorry Anuj, nobody cares, right? No one told me that nobody cares. And so to ask yourself what do you really want to say is one. But a lot of people have the other problem, which is I'm too scared to say. I have tons to say, but I'm not confident. What if my grammar is wrong? What if someone will judge me, right? So the second point is content, which is I encourage each one of you to first write and then judge, right? Which is, there's this famous writing rule which says, write drunk, edit sober, right? Or the first draft is the worst draft, right? Because if your first draft is amazing, please meet me at the end of the session. We need to hire more writers. Because it's damn hard to write a great first draft. It's very hard. So just say it. And because you have one more rule, the third, which is construct, which is how you say it. That's when you say, okay, 90% of what I wrote is not important, right? And so I will pick the 10% that really matters. And that's the tiny exercise we're going to quickly do now before I wrap up today's session, right? So this is a 140 character story. This is the tiniest guide to writing a tiny story, right? So first, some examples. It's a girl. Hello, hello, hello. Right? So this is the tiny story. It's someone calling and announcing and then someone just not responding on the other side. There is a gun on my back and books on yours. How each of us fears what the other carries. So let's play a quick game, right? I'm going to throw a bunch of words and we're going to quickly interpret what the word means, right? The first word is suitcase. No judgments, right? Anyone can think of anything that is triggering this baggage. I love it. It's a suitcase baggage. Toolbox, awesome. Pichidambaram, wow, I love it. Travel, I like it, letting the cat out. Yes, sir, at the back. Holiday, we all need one. Oh, literally an orange bag, awesome. Okay. Change, I love that. Change, yes, ma'am. You're the founder of a suitcase bag, awesome. Amazing. Opportunity, Schrodinger's cat, amazing. A toolkit. Okay, awesome. So because we don't have too much time, you get the drift, right? Any and everything that you can imagine is good. When I got the word, I made suitcase a bit of a villain in my story. Two men traveled the world. One carried a suitcase, the other a backpack. The first man watched the world. The second man touched it. Right? So it's just wherever a suitcase can take you. The other word, next, very quickly, bridge. 30 seconds. Connection, London, Brooklyn, all right. Let's not name all bridges across the... Okay. What else? Love story, very nice. As long as it's not going to suicide very quickly, I'm fine. Mediation. I love that, mediation. Filling the void, amazing. Connection, beautiful. Transition, what else? What else? Very quickly. Water, in most cases, yes, water. Gaps, nice. Taking a risk. Funding, a bridge round, yes. Bridge rounds are needed everywhere, right? Yes. Mind the gap, excellent. Cultures, beautiful. Making a path when none existed, loved it. Card game, awesome. Okay, so this is bridge. We've got some amazing answers on bridge. At 21, it bridged the fragile distance between our lips. At 28, it cemented the length between our hearts. At 34, our bridge quivers as I walk. Right? So it became a metaphor for all relationships. And so how does all these wonderful interpretations become a story? Right? So very quickly, seed. Right? So when I got the word seed, one of the first things was like, okay, seed round, this growth, all of that. And then I was like, okay, we're actually screwing with nature, global warming. What if the seed has no story because there are no trees? So my first idea, this story is about a seed that will blossom into a tree. But hey, what? The story is it has no story. And then I was like, okay, but humans without parents, they have a life, they have a story. So an orphan seed dreamt of trees, sang songs of the sun, danced on its soil. On parched nights, it would silently shed a tear and water itself. But I was like, this is too long, right? So when I was telling you that a lot of writing feels great to you, but may not be great for the consumer or the reader, this is like your time's up. But guess what? I remember the story. Orphan seed dreams of trees, sheds a tear, waters itself. Right? So that is all we need to do. Take the juice of what we want to say and say it in the clearest, simplest, most relatable manner. So on that note, thank you very, very much. I want to leave you with one word that I want you to attempt whenever you get time, which is, the word is story, right? And so each one of you, please write this tiny story about your own story, right? So in 140 characters, a story about story. Thank you so much. My name is Anuj.